Allen Lund Company has new offices in Ogden, Utah and Indianapolis, Indiana. Check allenlund.com to reach them.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Reddick.
An Iowa-based trucking company is being sued over allegations of racial discrimination. Attorney Ben Lynch joins the program with his client's side of the story. There's a new paid parking app on the scene. Tyson Fisher of Landline Magazine details the latest there, as well as other parking news in our latest installment of The Parking Zone. And finally, Hurricane Helene loomed large over the spot market last week. Brent Hutto of Truckstop joins the show to talk about market conditions out there in the wake of the tragedy and more. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. Let's begin with another member of the U.S. House throwing their support behind a measure that would go a long way toward alleviating the truck parking crisis. Representative Seth Magaziner of Rhode Island is the 52nd co-sponsor of H.R. 2367, the Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act. This is the bill that would pump $755 million over 3 years into truck parking projects nationwide. The bill counts an even mix of Republicans and Democrats as supporters. 26 lawmakers from each side of the political aisle have signed on so far. H.R. 2367 was introduced by Representative Mike Bost of Illinois more than a year and a half ago. The congressman comes from a trucking family, so he knows firsthand the difficulties drivers face when trying to find safe parking options. But many of his colleagues don't have that same understanding. Congressman Bost explained to us how he educates his colleagues about the truck parking problem in terms they can understand.
Well, I can explain to them that it's a safety problem. It's a safety problem for the professional drivers themselves, but it's also a safety problem for if that person is driving a car or a pickup truck, because they're right there along the highway where they could be off the highway, and instead, whenever a person who's driving themselves all of a sudden gets a little bit sleepy, looks down for a moment, rather than just having an open shoulder, if you ran off the shoulder, you're going to have a truck right there, and you can go underneath the truck and the dangers that face there. So you've got those two things that are out there that have to be dealt with, and knowing and understanding the concerns. But then it also, whenever supply chain issue is one of the big issues out there everybody's talking about, if you talk about the fact that 45 minutes of a driver's day is spent looking for a place to park, that takes a whole lot of things that need to be moving in that supply chain off the road looking for parking spots rather than moving down the road just to the check place where they have to because they're electronic logbooks.
Truck drivers are in a unique position to educate their elected representatives as well, and there's an easy way to go about doing that on the fightingfortruckers.com website. The Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration has announced a proposal that would simplify regulations for fuel haulers. Some of the proposed changes include simplifying hazard communication requirements for fuels that are transported in tanker trucks, codifying manufacturing standards for newly built fertilizer tanks, and allowing the use of video and fiber optics technologies for inspecting and calibrating cargo tanks. In its notice of proposed rulemaking, PHMSA says the move would provide nearly $100 million in cost savings to businesses and consumers, while also enhancing transportation safety standards. Once published in the Federal Register, the public will have 90 days to comment on the proposal. After that, the agency will use the comments to determine whether to move forward with a final rule. A new survey reveals that the percentage of student drivers and trainees who are women is on the decline. The National Transportation Institute, or NTI, found that women make up less than 11% of student drivers and trainees this year. That's down nearly 5 percentage points from just 2 years earlier, putting the number back at 2019 levels. In a post to LinkedIn, NTI President and CEO Leah Shaver said she was disheartened but not surprised to see the regression. She wrote that the freight recession could be one reason for the decline, as fleets have pulled back on recruitment efforts in recent months, especially the recruitment of women and younger people. The data follows what other surveys have found in recent months about the overall number of women drivers in the industry. Earlier this year, the Women in Trucking Index reported that women made up 9.5% of the truck driving workforce, down from more than 12% just last year. The American Transportation Research Institute conducted a survey earlier this year in a bid to find out what challenges women currently face in the trucking industry. Abigail Huffman, research analyst with ATRI, said the responses yielded 6 main barriers.
The first is negative industry image and perception. So really identifying before somebody even enters the industry, what are some of those industry image barriers What are they thinking about? What does a truck driver look like, and what does the industry look like, and how that might impact women's success in the industry. The second was looking at why they don't complete training school. And this was, we looked at reasons men and women don't complete, and commonly they're very similar reasons. It's too expensive. They can't meet the skills required for the training, can't access childcare. Maybe the school is too far from them. So just really looking at that, and again, not really gender specific. The third thing we looked at was motor carrier company culture. There's a lot of companies out there doing the right thing, really making sure they're listening to their drivers. But for the carriers that are not quite there, it's kind of a guidebook to say, hey, maybe these are some recommendations to listen to your drivers, make sure you're hearing their concerns. The fourth is OTR driver lifestyle. So the first part of that is home time. How can you accommodate your driver's home time needs? And then the second part of that is health. How can you help them build healthy habits through exercise, dieting, giving them enough sleep at night, or at least not, giving them the flexibility to really build a healthy schedule. The fifth part is parking and restroom access. And then the sixth part challenge is harassment and discrimination.
Identifying challenges faced by women in the industry was listed as a top priority by ATRI's Research Advisory Committee late last year. The report also includes a number of suggestions for recruiting more women for trucking jobs and creating an environment for them to stay. Authorities in New York State are on the lookout for commercial vehicles that are too tall. Troopers on Tuesday conducted an enforcement campaign on the New York State Thruway, reminding drivers that the maximum height clearance on the Thruway is 13 feet 6 inches and citing those who are over the limit. It's the second event of its kind in as many months. The blitzes started after New York Governor Kathy Hochul announced the formation of a bridge hit mitigation task force following several bridge strikes. The purpose of the task force is to educate commercial vehicle drivers about the importance of knowing the height of their vehicles and conducting targeted enforcement campaigns like this week's. Pilot is mobilizing to support Hurricane Helene relief. The company is holding a roundup campaign through October 18th at locations nationwide for the American Red Cross. 100% of the funds raised will be donated. In addition to the roundup campaign, Pilot is donating $300,000 to hurricane relief efforts. $100,000 is going to Red Cross Hurricane Helene relief and $200,000 to various local nonprofit organizations in affected areas. Deer mating season has arrived, along with a reminder. The Virginia DOT is among those reminding motorists to keep their eyes open for deer on roadways, especially at dawn and dusk, and especially along forested areas and streams. Virginia DMV officials say 42% of the crashes involving deer in the state last year happened in October and November. And finally, do not feed the raccoons. A woman in Washington state just learned that lesson the hard way. That is, if she learned the lesson. She recently had to call authorities after her home got surrounded by nearly 100 raccoons. The woman said she'd been giving food to raccoons near her home for about 35 years, and nothing noteworthy came of it until recently when that gang of trash pandas started getting aggressive looking for food. She called 911. It's unclear whether the raccoons have dispersed for good, but wildlife officials are using the story to remind folks not to feed raccoons. Like any other wild animal, raccoons that are fed by people often lose their fear of humans and can get aggressive when they don't get what they want. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. The OOIDA Foundation is accepting applications for the OOIDA Mary Johnston Scholarship. Find more information or apply at ooida.com. The deadline is February 1st. Next, attorney Ben Lynch discusses his client's discrimination lawsuit against a trucking company. Scott Thompson talks with Tyson Fisher of Landline Magazine for another installment of The Parking Zone, and we'll hear from Brent Hutto of Truckstop about the effect of Hurricane Helene on the spot market. We'll be back in just a moment. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
At Truckstop, we built a better load board for carriers like you. Sign up today and access over 600,000 loads on the most trusted online load board. Learn why the best in the business rely on Truckstop to make more money and start driving your profit today.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Landline now, welcome back. An Iowa-based trucking company is being sued. TMC Transportation has been accused of racial discrimination in a case that centers around hair, and it's not the first case of its kind against TMC. I recently spoke with the attorney who's representing Drew Harvey in the case, and here is that conversation.
My name is Ben Lynch. I am a lawyer in Des Moines, Iowa. I've been practicing for 8 years. I do a lot of civil rights and activism work, and through those experiences, I have come to represent a gentleman named Drew Harvey in a lawsuit that he's filed against TMC.
Yeah, and we've got a lot of ground to cover here, so let's get right into it here. This incident happened earlier this year, this incident that prompted this lawsuit. Can you just walk us through what happened exactly there with TMC and your client?
Yeah, to make a long story short, essentially my client was, he applied for a position to be a truck driver with TMC, which is a trucking company in Des Moines, the capital of Iowa. It's a big trucking company. They employ a lot of people. And my client lives in Illinois, and he applied. A few days later, he got a call from corporate saying, hey, come on down to Des Moines, Iowa to do our orientation. We're going to have you come, I think it was the next day after this, after he was approved, and my client got in a rental car and he drove from Illinois to Des Moines. The following day, he did his first day of orientation. The second day of orientation, he was pulled into HR halfway through the day, and he thought he was going to be congratulated for his good work that he was doing during orientation, because he was getting good grades, participating, helping people. And when he was brought back there, he was told, you need to buzz your head or you're being fired. And my client is a young guy, 20s or 30s. I don't quite remember his age. However, he has some dreadlocks down to like his shoulders, like almost like his collar length, depending on how he wears it. And the HR department took issue with the style of his hair, the way that his hair looked.
What specifically, I mean, what did HR tell him? I mean, it sounds like they, as you said there, wanted him to cut his hair, but did they give a reason as to why they wanted the hair cut?
So the answer to that question is very confusing to me, and I still don't really have a good answer for it. So their hair policy, which I don't believe that they enforce correctly or fairly, does state that men cannot have long hair. However, women can, including women truck drivers. So I would interpret that to not be a safety thing, because I've heard kind of through the grapevine and stuff online and kind of talking with TMC when I can get them on the phone, is that this has something to do with safety. And my client would have been unloading trucks when he would get to his destination. Like, for example, let's say he drives a truck from Des Moines to L.A. And when he gets to L.A., he has to take some pallets off of a truck bed. And there's some contention that his hair could get caught up in like a strap or be some sort of a safety issue. My client said, hey, I will put my hair in a head wrap. He even offered to trim it, cut his hair a little bit. He offered to braid it a different way. He offered to get a different hard hat that would make them feel more comfortable. And they said no. So considering that it didn't seem to be a safety issue, I'm inferring that it's some sort of a grooming policy, or it has to come just to aesthetics. And the problem that we have with that is you can go on TMC's websites and social media over the years, and they've had white guys or non-black employees who have been able to have long hair. So we believe that even if they're following their policy, which we don't agree with, it hasn't been enforced correctly. And we believe that my client, based on his dreadlocks, was unfairly targeted, and they just chose to enforce the policy on that day.
So let's talk about what happened next there. As you said there, Mr. Harvey made some concessions, offered to trim it, and maybe do some other things that would kind of fall in line with the policy there. What happened next? Because obviously it didn't work out with TMC and your client. They parted ways. How did that separation take place?
One thing I have to note about my client, he's 26. He's a very nice young man. When he came into my office to tell me about this, I knew I had to help him, because he's just the nicest nicest guy. He's just a likable, good-looking guy. His hair looks great. It's well kept. It's very well groomed. I actually have long hair myself too. I'm a white guy, but it definitely made me want to help him even more when I met him because he's so likable and nice. But my client describes the interaction in that HR room as him trying to find solutions. He wanted to work there very badly. He drove 6 hours, 4 or 5, 6 hours to come there. And he didn't want to be terminated on the spot. He wanted to work with them. He wanted to try to find a solution. Like I mentioned, he offered to trim it, style it a different way, wear a head wrap, different hard hat. And they just said, they said no. And they're like, if you're not willing to, cut your hair very short so that way you don't have dreads anymore, you're done. He's like, well, I can't do that. He's like, I've had dreads for a long time. It's important to my culture, ethnicity, heritage, spirituality. His father's no longer alive, and his dreadlocks was a connection that they had on that, where his dad had dreads, and they like to have that together. They found hair to be important and something they could bond over. And since filing this, it's kind of gone viral. So I've been contacted by lots of different people of color that find hair to be very important to them. And what I'm finding is that dreadlocks are a little bit more important to people of color than it is to white people. So it goes deeper than just, hey, cut your hair. Can you style it a different way? It's unique to them. It's a cultural identity and something that you can't just take away from them. So it goes a little bit deeper than that. So it made him feel terrible, and he didn't really have an option. They just said, you need to leave. You're done. We're getting you a bus pass for the next day. He called me crying. I signed up his case that night, and he went on the bus crying on the way back to Illinois, literally crying. He wanted the job. He felt terrible. He still does.
Yeah, and I understand that, obviously. You said you've talked to or reached out to TMC several times. Have they given you any explanation here? What are they telling you essentially about what happened there?
They have yet to give me their side of the story. I filed this Iowa civil rights complaint in late June, so we're in early October. I have not heard their position. I don't know what their take on this is. I couldn't tell you if it's a safety thing, if it's a grooming thing, if it's both. I don't know. I don't know what their position is, so I couldn't tell you where they're at on this. I wish I could. I would love to talk with them about this. My client truly is not in this for the money. He has never talked about the money to me once. I don't take that as a driving factor in why he did this. I think it's about, to him, right and wrong, and making sure this doesn't happen to other people, and trying to change things for the better going forward, trying to rectify some of the wrongs of what they've done to other people, because I've also been contacted by literally dozens of current and former TMC employees who are black and said they did the exact same thing to me. They flew me in from LA or Montana or Texas, and then they turned around and sent me home, or they fired me halfway through my employment one day where they just said, we ain't doing the dreads thing, go home, you're done. And it's very concerning because TMC, the individuals who pulled my client into HR and talked with them, they're all older white men. So I don't necessarily know if they can relate to my client or understand why it might be important to him.
You mentioned that TMC has faced similar allegations before. There was a story a few years back that kind of went national, a very similar story, actually almost an identical story in a lot of ways, to your client's story. And I think that they ended up settling that, and that story kind of went away, right? But that essentially was the same thing that your client went through, correct?
Unfortunately, I was involved in that case, and all I can say is that I am not at liberty to comment on that.
Gotcha.
For obvious reasons. I just can't go into detail on that. Because the case is not active anymore. So anything online, you're free to go look at. There's lots of reporting on it. However, I can't necessarily comment on the facts and merits and what happened in that case, but I'm fully able to comment on the current case because I have consent from my client and it's active. There's no confidentiality agreement or anything like that. It's all public record. So unfortunately, I really can't get into that one, but as an investigator, you're fully able to go online and see what's out there.
Understood. Let's talk about what happens next here. You filed this lawsuit. Talk to me about the case. Talk to me a little bit about what the law says about situations like this. This is a discrimination lawsuit. Can you talk a little bit about maybe precedent, how these cases are typically handled, and what your argument's going to be?
I mean, you can go online and you can look up something called the Crown Act, which is something that Iowa doesn't have. It kind of protects, it's some legislation that's been enacted in some states that can be used to help protect people for their hairstyle. Iowa doesn't have anything that, to my knowledge, explicitly is codified protecting people's hairstyle, namely people of color or men. So we don't have anything like that to lean on to. However, the Iowa Civil Rights Act does expressly say that you cannot discriminate against people based on their skin color. So that is the angle that we are filing this lawsuit. And actually just yesterday, I amended our civil rights complaint to include account for gender discrimination and also religion and creed discrimination based on my client's ethnicity, heritage, spirituality, and then also based on the fact that it appears, at least based on paper, that they are holding different people to different standards. So you cannot treat people differently in the workplace, and if you do, you're subject to a lawsuit. So we filed this back in September 26, 2024, and it's very, very early. They did just hire an attorney and who's filed an appearance on the case or an acceptance of service. So these things can take a long time. A civil lawsuit in Iowa can take 2 or 3 years, and if you add appeals and trials on all that, it can take even longer. So between now and then, really what's going to be happening will be I'm going to be taking the deposition of people that work there. I'm going to be getting their documents. I'm going to be going through the discovery process. I'm sure the other side will be filing things to try to get the case dismissed. So I don't really know where things will go, but I do know that it will be a long process. And, I'm going to be leaning in on the Iowa Civil Rights Act to justify the lawsuit.
And in terms of where you would like to see this end up, you're looking for compensation for injuries, damages. What exactly would be a best case scenario for your client, when this situation is resolved?
Like I said, my client, the driving force behind this case for him, in my opinion, based on my talks with him, has not been, I want money. He's never said that to me. Obviously, when you file a lawsuit, that's pretty much your only remedy. I mean, he's already been fired. You don't really give him his job back, or you can't pretend it never happened. It happened. We got to kind of try to rectify it. So in the courts, pretty much the only way that you can do that is with monetary compensation. However, I think if TMC would have interacted with us early and tried to make this right, make sure it doesn't happen again, maybe give him an apology, it never had to come to this. So it's not like he's just this litigious person who loves filing lawsuits. This is stressful. It takes a long time. It's expensive. So I don't really have an outcome for you. I do know that as his attorney, I'm absolutely going to be advising him to make a demand for money damages, which we have done. We have not alleged that particular number yet, but I'm absolutely going to be also pushing for assurances that something like this isn't going to happen again, maybe some policy changes, an apology, maybe some training on diversity in the workplace from upper management. So we'll see what happens, but you can get pretty creative with what you ask for.
And I mean, this was clearly a traumatic experience for your client, understandably. How is he doing today? Is he doing all right?
He's doing okay. I still think he's kind of in shock. He's kind of staying under the radar for now. I think he's, it's also kind of traumatic for him to see his name in the news and being involved in a lawsuit. It's very traumatic, and putting your story out there, it's certainly a pretty vulnerable thing to do. So I think he's kind of just trying to regroup and move forward and let me handle the stuff on the back end with the legal stuff as he tries to just move on and try to move towards normalcy.
Our thanks to Ben Lynch for his time. We did reach out to TMC Transportation to see if they wanted to talk about what happened or the lawsuit. The company's official response to us was no comment. We'll step aside for a moment, but Landline Now continues right after this short commercial break.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
Capital Reman, the leader in remanufactured diesel engines and components, has partnered with OOIDA to offer exclusive member benefits. Visit CapitalReman.com today to support America's transportation industry and take advantage of your benefits.
When it's time to overhaul your truck engine, help protect it by insisting on a genuine Vibratech TVD crankshaft damper. Heavy duty, absolute premium quality, and they're made right here in the USA. Find a dealer at vibratechtvd.com.
A blank space on many maps with the distance between parking spaces seemingly as great as infinity. It is the boundary that separates safety and security from the dangers of the road, the space between electronic signs and a place in which to rest. It is not a dimension of the imagination, but instead the reality faced by truck drivers every single day. It is a place we call the parking zone. Here are your guides for this journey into parking news, good and bad, Scott Thompson and Tyson Fisher.
Thanks, Mark, and thanks to you, Tyson, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Lots to get to here. Let's not waste any time. And Tyson, there is a new parking app on the market. What can you tell us?
Yes, there is. There's a new company called Truck Park Management. They just recently received $15 million in funding, basically to get the ball rolling for its parking app called Truck Lots. So that's a parking app that's to look out for. It's in the early stages right now, so there's only like a handful of available lots kind of sprinkled throughout the country. Heavy concentration in the Atlanta and Dallas-Fort Worth area, which with
Those
a lot of times
areas that need it.
Right. So that makes sense. And every time a truck parking app comes in the market, that seems to be the case. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense why. So what is currently available, there's only like a few amenities outside of the security features. Now, with that being said, Truck Park Management said that it plans to acquire, develop, and manage truck parking facilities that, quote, exceed current industry standards. And so the company's goal is to develop high amenity parking lots that are 15 to 30 acres that can hold up to 500 parking spots. So those amenities would include showers, lounge and kitchen area, a fitness facility, laundry, health clinics, pet wash. It's like a wide variety of things that's more reminiscent of a truck, like an actual truck stop that we see with like travel centers and Loves and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I took a look at the app earlier this morning, and it's kind of like a cross between Truck Parking Club and Outpost. So like Truck Parking Club is kind of like that Airbnb of truck park, whereas Outpost, they pretty much manage their own. So it's kind of a hybrid of those two. With right now, it's mostly just third-party parking lots that we're looking at. But what makes Truck Park Management stand out is, of course, the amenities that they said that they are going to offer. So with like Outpost and Truck Parking Club, these are mostly just yards with some place for parking for the most part.
Sure.
What Truck Lots is saying that they're going to offer are all these amenities, like food and showers and whatnot. These are the stuff that truckers actually need when they're looking for a place to rest. And also the other thing that's worth noting is the scale. So Truck Park Management, they said that they have plans to operate and manage 200 to 300 parking sites within the next 5 years, which
it's pretty ambitious.
Pretty ambitious, especially considering they want to include all of these amenities. So to kind of put that into perspective, Truck Parking Club, pretty much the biggest truck parking app right now, they just announced today that they hit 800 locations, but they've been around for a little while.
Right.
And again, that's kind of like the Airbnb, whereas this other company, Truck Lots, wants to manage their own. So anyway, I think it's one of those things where it's big if true type of, So
Right.
if they can manage to get 200 to 300 parking sites with all these amenities, especially if they're about several hundred spaces each, I mean, that can do a lot for truck parking. So I got my fingers crossed on this. I'll be keeping an eye out on them and see if it, kind of what shakes out from this.
Just to be clear, we're talking paid parking here too.
Paid parking,
right?
that's
Which, it remains to be seen. Obviously, the demand is out there for parking. I'm curious to see how much truck drivers are willing to pay for services like this. I think it's still kind of playing out in terms of what that looks like and how much people are willing to pay. Obviously, these folks believe there's a market out there.
Yeah.
And we're kind of seeing how that plays out, I guess, over time.
We are,
right?
and I think that to their credit here, I think truckers would be much more willing to pay for a spot if they have all these amenities.
Sure,
and I see
yeah.
why this can be more of a winning solution for everybody.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that and obviously keep people updated as we get more information. Moving on to another city now. Stop me if you've heard this one before. Another city cracking down on overnight truck parking, and it's off a major corridor, Interstate 78 in eastern Pennsylvania.
Yeah, this is in Easton, Pennsylvania. So it's just northeast of Allentown. That's kind of the area that we're looking at. So they just recently increased their fines for overnight tractor and tractor trailer parking. So basically, it's a tenfold increase. They're really not messing around this time. So for a tractor only, the fine is going to go up from $25 to $250.
It's a big jump.
And if it's a tractor trailer, the fine is going to be $500. So again, this is just a way to disincentivize illegal parking. So I checked one of those parking apps that we talked about. I kind of looked at one to see what the truck parking situation is over there. And a lot of parking availability through these apps is more than $25. So, I mean, it's kind of like, yeah, I'll take that $25 fine as opposed to that $35 to park on this lot over here through this trucking app.
Right.
So, yeah.
$250 is a bit different.
$250
or $500.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the city officials started to recognize that and it's like, all right, this is how we're going to deal with that. So that's kind of heads up what's going on over there.
It wasn't too long ago when the headlines in New York City were about the city cracking down on illegally parked tractor trailers.
Yeah.
Now we've got a situation there in the Bronx, I guess, neighborhood there. They are now kind of joining the fight there against illegally parked trucks. What's going on there?
Yeah, this is the Wakefield neighborhood of the Bronx. So yeah, they're cracking down on truck parking. So what happened was, as you kind of just mentioned, the NYPD's been cracking down on illegal parking a lot the past couple of years, especially the last couple of years. And truck parking has been illegal in this neighborhood for some time, but there has been a little enforcement of that law. And so after receiving a bunch of complaints, the NYPD, that precinct, they were given the green light to start writing tickets and towing trucks. It's basically what went down. So this was a short-term solution for a lot of people are thinking. So the question is, like, how long can they keep up this enforcement? Because you're kind of spread thin, the NYPD, with this. So one possible solution in this area is bike lanes. Truckers are far less likely to park in a bike lane as opposed to just the side of the street. And so that's one thing that they're looking at. But again, just another situation in New York City with truck parking. That's the bad news. The good news is, as far as truck parking in New York City is, so last year, a new law was passed in the city that requires all of the boroughs to identify at least 3 locations for truck parking. And so basically by the end of next year, the boroughs have to pretty much submit that list, again, by the end of next year, and then basically just have those locations available for truck parking. So it's, it's something,
Yeah, it's something, yeah.
It is something, but before this list it becomes official, there is nothing. And so, so the city is requiring some type of truck parking somewhere in those areas. So I think this is progress.
Yeah, fact checked. Something is better than nothing. I just looked it
okay.
up. So that is, we're making progress. But that obviously, that area needs a lot of help with regard to truck parking.
Sure.
And this will help, but a lot more help needed there. TA Travel Centers, they have, I guess, in recent weeks, closed down a couple of different truck stops in different parts of the country. You've looked into this, and you've got some information for us.
Yeah, the first one is the Travel Centers in Corning, California. So this is right off of Interstate 5, exit 630. It's about 50 miles south of Redding, so Northern California. That truck stop had 254 truck parking spaces. That's going to close. If it's not closed already, I think it's within the next week or two is when this is going to close. It's a pretty popular truck stop from what I understand. And so a TA spokesperson said that the company is, this is their language, constantly evaluating its portfolio to ensure it's operating in locations that make sense for its customers and its business. That's the explanation that we got. So So here's the thing. There is a Petro, which TA owns. There's a Petro, like, I think literally across the street from this travel centers. It's only 120 truck parking spaces. There's also a Love's with 130 truck parking spaces. So there's still options there. But
not as many, though.
Not as many, and that's still 250 spots gone. So, yeah, that's Corning, California. Meanwhile, in Knoxville, Tennessee, Travel Centers of America, Knoxville East location, this is Interstate 40, exit 374. That's going to be closing as well. That's 131 truck parking spots. At any rate, this is pretty much the exact same situation as Corning, California, in that there are actually 2 other TA-owned truck stops in that area. And so, I mean, it kind of looks like they are just this is not quite a pattern yet. There's only 2, but 2 in a very short amount of time to where they are, closing truck stops where they already have a presence in that area. So not sure if this is going to be something that they're going to be doing, further down the road, but that's at least 2 locations where they are doing exactly that.
Yeah, and I understand why they're doing it. It makes sense from a business standpoint, but it sure does stink for the truck drivers who depend on those truck parking spaces in those areas. And the truck parking situation will undoubtedly tighten up in those areas that you just talked about there. Let's move on here. We talked about Atlanta earlier and just truck parking generally there, which obviously not a great situation there. Now we've got a county outside of Atlanta. They have decided to study the truck parking issue there.
Yeah, so Douglas County, Georgia, they're going to launch a freight study. So they're going to look at all aspects of trucking in this region. That includes truck ordinances, truck routes, and then, truck parking. So the bad news is that the study will clarify who enforces trucking-related laws. So there'll be more enforcement of the existing laws. But the good news is, they're going to look at the truck parking situation as well. As you mentioned, the Atlanta region is a really sore spot when it comes to truck parking. Probably one of the worst spots in the nation when it comes to truck parking. So to have the county adjacent to Atlanta address that issue could be pretty significant, especially considering that freight traffic is going to increase by 56% by 2040. So anyway, these studies take about a year and a half to complete, during which there will be public comment periods. And so if you live in that area, I encourage all truckers, as always, to participate in those comments periods so they can get more direct locations on where the problems actually exist.
We don't have a lot of time left. Let's kind of run through at least 1 or 2 other stories here. We've got a possible new truck stop outside of St. Louis. Yeah,
Marine, Illinois. So this is just off of Interstate 70. The county board there approved of a truck stop in that area. This is one of those situations to where initially it got denied, but the city officials saw value in a truck stop in that area, and they said, screw it, we're going to keep moving on with this. And so, hopefully we'll have a new truck stop there on I-70.
Oklahoma, we've got a Turnpike Travel Plaza that looks to be expanding there.
This is the Stroud Turner Turnpike Travel Plaza there. Yeah, so it's going to go through major renovations. Long story short, the existing Love's is going to be even bigger. It's going to have 150 truck parking spots, which is about 50 more truck parking spots than it has right now. So expansion there.
And real quick, the Pennsylvania Turnpike looks like there's potential for more truck parking there.
Yeah, the Breezewood Interchange, exit 161, is going to go to some redesigning, and part of that redesign is going to look at the truck parking situation in that area. So potential more truck parking off the Pennsylvania Turnpike, another area where we need a lot more truck parking. Absolutely, for sure. Yeah,
for sure, absolutely. Yeah, and hopefully they take that study and do something with it and realize that there's a problem there and actually put some truck parking spots in place. Tyson, we appreciate it as always. Landline.media and Landline Magazine is where you can find his work. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll step out for a quick break, but hang tight. There's more Landline Now on the other side.
If you're running ultra-low sulfur diesel in your vehicle, make sure you are prepared and protected all winter long with Howes Diesel Treat, the #1 anti-gel product in North America from the 100-plus-year trusted brand Howes Products.
Truckdown.com. Whenever you have a breakdown, you need Truckdown.com. 24/7 access to 40,000 verified heavy-duty repair vendors nationwide.
Repair secured. Load assured.
Truckdown.com.
Firestone tires are for more of everything, with more durability for more miles and more confidence in your fleet. Firestone's tested tires help fleets save with value where it matters most. Learn more at bridgestonenationalfleet.com/4moremiles.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now, welcome back. If you're hauling freight and running your own business, you need to keep track of some basic facts and figures that can determine whether you succeed or fail. And that includes finding the freight and how much money you can make hauling it. Today, Landline Now's Scott Thompson will bring us some of that information and get some insight as to why things are happening with the folks from Truckstop.com. Here's Scott now with a report.
Thanks, Mark, as we welcome our returning champion back to the show, Brent Hutto of Truckstop. Brent, how you doing?
Well, man, Scott, I like being called a champion. That's a great thing. That's a great what a great nickname. From now on, that's what I could be.
Hey, I only speak the truth here. We appreciate having you on the show. We got a lot to talk about here, but before we get to all the latest from the spot market, I know you've been tracking the situation throughout the Southeast following Hurricane Helene and now Hurricane Milton. A lot of devastation there and a lot of thoughts going out to everybody.
Yeah, well, for sure. The thing that is always heartwarming is to watch trucking, Scott, react to the need of the fellow, citizens of the United States and how trucking steps up in the middle of all the craziness. They did it during the pandemic where 90% of them went to work, when 90% of them felt like their health was at risk. And it was amazing things. But to see the same thing, and a lot of the large players, too, anywhere from FedEx to Averitt to even Norfolk Southern Railroad, big players in the market. But, man, it's really the owner-operators that pull most of this heavy FEMA freight into these areas or freight just into the areas. And so it's been interesting to watch, and it's always heartwarming to me to see the truckers and trucking companies respond and help because they always do, because that's just who they are. And so those areas like in Nashville now, certainly if Tampa gets hit at this level, this is not something that you look at. And this is what, most truckers know this, but most Americans don't. This isn't just to come in and 2 weeks later everything's all cleaned up.
Yeah.
This is a 6-month project that or longer to help people out of these situations. And when you consider the topography in North Carolina, it may be a lot longer than that. And so it'll be interesting to see how things continue to work out. And you hear all the news about one of the things about FEMA loads, which is we're not seeing them either. Where are these FEMA loads that normally come out for truckers to haul? Certainly because they have a better rate, but also because the need needs to get to people. We haven't seen them. I've been looking all over the place. We don't see them on our board. We haven't seen them from brokers. We haven't seen them. I reached out to FEMA, and they said that they post them to the authorized people that have been signed up to work for FEMA. But normally we see them in the marketplace, but we haven't seen any of them, which is very odd. So that's certainly something to be looking at as this thing continues to play out.
For sure, yeah. And as you point out there, the trucking community, I say this all the time, one of the most giving and thoughtful communities out there, and always willing to help out in situations like this. And again, our thoughts go out to everybody who's been affected by Helene and now Hurricane Milton. We'll obviously keep our eye on that. Let's get down to business here, Brent. Looking at the spot market, considering, I guess, all that's going on out there, what kind of movement are we seeing out there in the market?
Well, one of the things, and I love to talk to all the owner-operators about this, and most of them know this, but, you got to, sometimes you're so busy with your work, you're not always paying attention to it. But where there's chaos, there's opportunity for people to help and people to do things that usually are not normally available in the market. So the overall spot market had a pretty big increase last week from where it was. It went up 9 cents. Per mile, just overall, van, flatbed, and reefer all increased anywhere from about 9 cents to 11 cents. Well, anywhere from about 3 cents on refrigerated, but van and flatbed went up tremendously. Flatbed's going to go way up because of the goods that need to go into a natural disaster area. But the thing I would like to point out to owner operators is where there's chaos in areas or greater need in areas, there's always increased rates. So when you're looking for freight, the thing to do is to look for areas where there's always greater need at different times of the year. And to know that, it helps you in your business and helps you find better freight that pays better across the board, not just during FEMA times, because that's not considered economic opportunity from a standpoint like what it normally does. But yeah, so that's what you want to look at. The pressure in the marketplace went up about 12 points. In other words, there's just more freight available right now. And year over year, I just saw some great data from our chief economist that showed just last year to this year. Last year was a negative, obviously, for freight. In other words, there was less freight in the marketplace because the marketplace was going all the way back down to normal. This year, we've actually had slight increases, and that's promising, Scott, super promising, because more freight usually means prices will go up. And if you look at the last 11 weeks now, granted the hurricane natural disaster made rates go up quite a bit, but we've had 12 straight weeks now of increased prices year over year in the spot market, which is a really promising thing for owner-operators. Still not back at the rates they need to be at, but upward momentum. You always want to look at which angle things are going at, and right now rates continue to go up year over year, which is really good. Should be great for an owner-operator's bottom line.
Yeah, moving in the right direction, and I think more importantly, moving, because for the longest time there, we saw things kind of just bottom out and stay there at the bottom, but it does seem like we're slowly crawling out of that dark place, I guess, as you could put it there. You mentioned a couple things I want to follow up with here. You talked about, regions, lanes, obviously the hurricane playing a role in some of that, but what are you looking at there? And as you look at the big picture, owner-operators, what are you hoping that they can maybe take away from this and, learn from this experience out there?
Well, yeah, for sure. You want to look at different regions, and what was promising as well for owner-operators is the load availabilities went up in all but two regions. West Coast and Mountain Central didn't go up week to week. This is just week to week. But the Southeast, this is interesting. If you haul in the Southeast or the Northeast, the Southeast year over year is up 53%. The Northeast is up 10%. That's a lot of freight. So that's what I talked about, like knowing where the predominance of load is, where there's more freight than there are trucks, because then you'll get much better prices as you're moving your business forward. So, but that's on load availability. On prices as well, we saw prices increase week to week. Every single region in America, except the Northeast, went down 0.1%, which for the most part held even. So the idea is just to kind of continue to understand where the market is continuing to shift. And, if you're a trucker, you can haul anywhere. So where are those areas where you can gain the best rate? And remember, I just want to say this over and over and over again, Scott. The freight rates that are posted on any load board anywhere, especially even including ours, is that those are the posted rates. Those aren't the final negotiated rates. If you're not negotiating for 5, 10, 15% more, then you're probably not looking at the data well enough. In this modern data era, trusting your gut is not always a bad strategy, but it's not the best strategy. The gut is take your gut, what you know historically, but also look at the data in a marketplace, because you got all of it out there for you to look at, and then negotiate from there, because you're negotiating with somebody who's looking at that data too. Yeah. So they know the data. If you know it and they know it, then you can negotiate the best rate. And that's really always what's the best benefit for anybody hauling freight in the United States, especially our incredible owner-operators.
Real quick, before we go here, Brent, we got about a minute left. I know you've gotten an announcement about a new partnership between Truckstop and OIDA.
We have an announcement.
There you go. Yes.
Yeah, we have an announcement. Over the last 9 months, Truckstop and OIDA have been talking about how can we best help owner-operators. And OIDA has been really challenging Truckstop on how do you protect against fraud? How do you protect against their bottom line? And we've been working out, been thinking about and talking through working out how can we best serve owner-operators if we join forces, if we actually worked with each other. Now, we've always had a good relationship with OIDA because you guys protect the owner-operator like nobody's business. But what would it look like if we actually, held hands, sang Kumbaya, and we're kind of going down the road together? And so announced on Tuesday, October 8th, is an exclusive relationship between OIDA and Truckstop for freight matching and for fraud protection, and then new things to come on how we can continue to work together. The two largest names in helping owner-operators, OIDA and Truckstop, are going to be working together for the benefit of the owner-operator. Man, our CEO, Kendra Tucker, me, everybody else at Truckstop couldn't be more exciting to be working with the strongest name in owner-operators to help our great owner-operators grow their businesses and enjoy helping our country do what we do. So just really excited about that new partnership that we're working on together. Lots more to come on that, so just stay tuned to it.
More details to come, as you said there. We'll start singing Kumbaya later as well. Brent, always a pleasure. We'll talk to you soon.
You got it. Thanks, Scott.
All right, thanks to Brent Hutto of Truckstop. Mark, we'll toss it back to you.
Thanks, Scott. That's our program for today. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome,
and I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us! Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.